Well, good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, September the 7th. The time is 5:30, and I'd like to welcome you all to this virtual meeting of the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee meeting being held via Microsoft Teams. My first duty is to read out the privacy statement. This meeting will be recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals speaking will be publicly available to all via the recordings on the Council's website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. So moving on to agenda item 1, that is to receive apologies for absence. Mark, have we got apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Gaynor Oliver.
Thanks very much indeed. Is there anybody here this evening who knows of any further apologies at all? I take the sign that says no, so thanks very much. Mark, should we do a roll call before we start?
Yes, okay, Chair. Councillor Adams.
Present.
Councillor Bevan. Councillor Cushing.
Present.
Councillor Ellsbury.
Present.
Councillor Goff.
Present.
Councillor Harding.
Present.
Councillor Higgs. Councillor Kirby. Councillor Leonard.
Present.
Councillor Owen.
Present.
Councillor Price. Councillor Ridgewell.
Present.
Councillor Sargent.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
And Councillor Zapatinsky.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, everyone. Just to confirm, there were a few gaps in there. Are we quorate, Mark, tonight?
Yes, we are, Chair.
That's fine. Okay, right. So moving on to agenda item 2, which is the declarations of interest. And as you will all know, I will read this out to you. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and/or prejudicial interest in respect of any items of business on this agenda or in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution, and the Code of Conduct of both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations?
Yes, Chair, I'd just like to declare an interest in agenda item number 6. It's more of a personal rather than prejudicial, I think. And I know it's about past performance and it's an information for noting, but I'd just like to declare an interest in that regarding recycling.
I think that's duly noted. Mark, can we note that?
Yes, Chair, I got that. Councillor Cushing, as you say, that is a personal declaration, isn't it? It's not prejudicial.
Yes.
Mark Williams' hand is up as well, Chair.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of Councillor Cushing's declaration there, just to remind the committee, although this is the whole Directorate Performance Assessment, the remit of this committee is only the regeneration and planning elements of that. So anything to do with community and leisure, waste management, transport, engineering, highways is the remit of the Sustainability, Environment and Sustainability Committee. So those elements will not be discussed tonight. I've not got officers here because it's not the remit of this committee. So Councillor Cushing, you don't need to worry about your declaration because it's not within the remit of this committee anyway.
Many thanks, Mark. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mark. If I can just clarify that point. I mean, there are some of the regeneration issues which do overlap with some of the things that you've touched upon, and I think there may be some questions that are tumbling out of that. And I know that some of the officers here would be able to answer those. Would you be comfortable if they did come out and they didn't prejudice anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I can try and deal with them as well, Chair. but obviously if the discussion should really focus on the regen and planning elements of that DPA.
Indeed, and we've had a discussion before. I know I've made that clear that that is the case. So thanks for that. Okay. Forgive me while I scroll around on the screens here. So moving on to agenda item 3, which is to approve and sign the following minutes of the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee held on the 20th of July 2021. So just checking for accuracy, we have page 1, page 2, and page 3.
Move, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. Can we have a seconder, please? Mike, sorry, no,
No.
can't see your screen.
Second,
Rob.
Chair.
There we are.
Thank you very much.
Moved
So-
by Councillor Goff and seconded by Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Mike. I've got 3 things on my screen at the moment, so struggling a bit. Okay, so the vote is on the screen now.
And Councillor Cushion has a hand up. Oh, it's gone now. Yes, still up.
Yes, regarding a couple of matters arising into the minutes, that's all. Nothing to do with accuracy.
Well, we haven't voted yet. Well, the vote hasn't gone in. I'm happy to take them if you want to raise them at this juncture.
Right, it's under item 5 on the minutes, second paragraph and last sentence. The scrutiny officer advised the committee that he would seek clarification from the author of the report to circulate to members. Now, if I remember, this is to do with the dog control PSPO proposals. Has there been any update on that? Do we know if it's going to be a permanent thing or if it's going to be seasonal? And there was another item. Sorry, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm just using my laptop tonight because it's too hot in my office. Bear with. On the next page then, and it's under housing revenue account budget monitoring, and sorry, I'm have to go up there. The last one paragraph, further information was sought regarding the situation of void properties within other local authorities. In response, it was confirmed that the Cabinet Member for Housing would arrange for information to be gathered and circulated to committee members. I don't actually remember receiving anything on this, so is there any further update on that, please?
Yes, Chair, can I interject there? Because
yes, please do, Mark,
we did have emails on both those issues, and I'll recirculate them to members after the meeting.
That might have been entirely my fault then, Mark, but I appreciate it if you would. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cushion.
Thank you. So we had a delay before the vote. Can we vote now then?
Yeah, Chair, I vote in favour, although obviously I can't do it digitally.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Got that.
Excuse me, Chair. I've got 4 to vote, but I can't submit it. There's no submit button, so I vote for anyway.
That'll be noted. Thank you, Walter.
Mine's the same, Chair. Rob Goff, mine's the same.
Thank you, Rob. Okay.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, it's Sharon from Committee Services. We seem to have had a technical error or technical issue with forms. Okay. I wonder if the scrutiny officer wants to take a roll call for the vote.
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to do that. This is for the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Bevan. Councillor Cushin.
For.
Councillor Aylesbury.
For.
Councillor Goff.
For.
Councillor Hardin.
For.
Councillor Higgs. Councillor Kirby. Councillor Leonard.
For.
Councillor Owen.
For.
Councillor Price. Councillor Ridgewell.
4.
Councillor Sargent.
I'll abstain, please, as I wasn't at the meeting.
Councillor Williams.
4.
And Councillor Zaplatinsky.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried unanimously with 1 abstention.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. If we have an issue later on, Sharon, can you advise us as well, please? If we have problems with forms still?
Yes, I will do.
Thanks very much. Okay. So moving on to agenda item 4, consideration of any matters referred to in this committee in accordance with the call-in procedures. If I could just check with Mark, do we have any call-ins at all?
No, Chair, no call-ins for this meeting.
Thank you. Okay, right. Which leads us on to agenda item 5. Okay, this is the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme, and I'll hand it over to Mark for taking us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members are asked to consider the Forward Work Programme alongside the Cabinet Work Programme as appended to the report and to suggest any changes. From my perspective, there's no amendments to add to what's published in the pack. So if members are happy, I would like to seek approval to publish the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme as appended to the report onto the Council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Do we have any issues that want to be raised before we put this forward?
Can I, Chair, just come in? I'm not sure. Did I raise the structure within housing under this, or was on the next item?
It was more of a general issue. I don't think this is the one for it, but I'm happy to pick it up on the next item because we have the officers here who can probably respond to that. Rob, is that okay?
That's fine, Chair. I'm happy to move the forward.
Chair, can I ask a question, please? I have
sure,
tried to raise my hand, but it doesn't seem to want to work.
Okay, just shout out if you've got problems.
It's on the Cabinet Forward Work Programme, and it's on the Managing Service Risk at Alert Level 0. My question is, how is this going to be monitored? Will a report be going back to P&R, or which committee is likely to go back to? And it's on the corporate risk register as high. So I presume that will go back to audit at some stage. Can I have some answers, please? Thank you.
I'm not sure whether I'm in a position to answer it personally. I mean, I don't know whether, Mark, you could give some clarity on that if it's possible. Mark Williams.
Yeah, so that report, Chair, was considered by Cabinet last week. It hasn't been called in. I'm not sure that it's scheduled to go to P&R scrutiny because obviously it's already been to Cabinet. But obviously there will be further update reports to Cabinet in terms of monitoring. And the reason that the matter is on the corporate risk register obviously is that COVID is very fluid. You know, we're seeing cases on the rise again now, so it needs to remain on there as a risk for the authority.
It doesn't quite answer my question, Mark. How is being monitored? I understand you saying it hasn't been called in to this committee, and I understand it'll go back to Cabinet at some stage. But how can we be assured that the direction is going in? How is
so
corporate management? I don't mind speaking to someone about that.
Corporate management team regularly reviews. So we've got 2 risk registers. Obviously, there's the general corporate risk register. There's also a COVID risk register.
Yeah.
Both of those are regularly reviewed by corporate management team. The COVID risk register particularly is reviewed more often than the other one. Reviewed on probably a monthly basis. So, you know, this report on alert level 0 and the opening up of buildings will form part of that monitoring by corporate management team.
And how transparent will that be for members to see?
Well, obviously the risk register is available for members to look at, and the updates when that risk register is reviewed and amended by CMT. It's a live document then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. Is it fair to say that the detail of the report will come out actually when we review it in scrutiny, and we'll be able to ask those questions and get answers on those specifically at that time? I think, am I correct, Mark?
Yeah.
That's fine. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I think we had a mover. Do we have a seconder for this?
Walter Williams' hand is up.
Yeah, second, Chair.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that the vote works.
Submit was there that time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I vote in favour, okay.
I was going to ask Councillor Ellsbury, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried unanimously.
Okay.
10 for including Councillor Ellsbury on the telephone.
Thanks, Mark. So moving on to agenda item 6. I'm led to believe that Mark Williams will be leading on this, and Sammy, can we go straight over to you then, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as I said earlier, this is the Directorate Performance Assessment. I think it's the second time that this scrutiny has considered the kind of revised or our new approach to performance management by looking at the Directorate Performance Assessment. This relates to the last financial year, which I'm sure you can all appreciate was, I'll use the term different, but that's probably not strong enough. An unprecedented year in terms of what we went through. So the report is very much a covering report. The detail is in the DPA itself. Rian Kite has given her apologies. Unfortunately, her laptop has I'll use the term blown up because that's pretty accurate today. So she's not able to dial in this evening because Rian is also suffering with COVID at the minute. So he's unable to come into the office. But Alan Dallymore, in terms of any questions relating to Regen, and Ryan Thomas, in terms of any questions relating to planning, are in attendance tonight. Can I point out, Chair, there is a slight error, not in the report, but in the DPA itself, which I can apologise for. This has happened largely because of the publication coinciding with the bank holiday week. In the page 21 of the DPA, which is the section on finance, the page 21 that you have in your pack refers to the current year, whereas it should refer to the last financial year and the closure of the last financial year. So the report, before this was spotted, because of people being on leave, etc., the reports pack had already been published. It was too late to change that. But what I will do is arrange for a revised page 21 to be sent to members. But I can certainly deal with any queries relating to finance and give the overall position of regeneration and planning. So
thanks, Mark.
Apologies for that.
Yeah, presumably that amendment will be on the website as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
The report goes. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Right. Okay. So can I open up for any questions? Do we have any questions on the report? Councillor Goff.
Yeah, John, if I can, it's just to raise that thing. Mark, yeah. There's a lot of content in the report. Currently, we're restructuring in housing, and I think we've appointed, but they haven't started yet, a new senior housing or chief housing officer. Is it possible to let each councillor have a family tree of the housing department as it is now? I think Mike has got a supplementary question, which will come in the WHQS as well. But I think it'd be beneficial to us all now when we see the new structure for housing and who each of us would need to contact in our areas.
That's for the next item, Rob. That's item 7, the housing DPA.
I'm just eager to get in, Mark.
This is This is the Economy and Environment DPA. So you're a little bit ahead of yourself. Sorry.
Makes a change.
Yeah.
And John didn't remind me, sweetness of the chairman not to stop me.
I'll back that up after in the next
right. Sorry, Mark.
the next agenda item.
That's okay, no problem, Rob.
And I'm struggling with 5 screens here, so I apologize for not guiding you correctly on that. Okay. Mindful of what you were saying, Mark. I have a question though that I wanted to raise on this. Within the regeneration framework, I think it should be appropriate. And I believe we've got Alan Dallimore here tonight anyway. I note, I think it was on page 33, where they have all those charts. There was an interesting figure with regard to Cwmcarn Scenic Drive and the number of visitors that we've had. Now, there's been significant investment in the Scenic Drive, and I'm delighted with that, and I think we're all delighted there'll be further investment in the future. But I wondered if Alan, if he's here, might be able to just give us some guidance on the kind of plans we have for encouraging more visitors, because clearly we know the reasons why the numbers have gone down, but what the approach might be on that. Is that possible to have an answer to that?
Yeah, of course there is, Councillor. I'll start by saying that the drive is now open. You know, that in collaboration with NRW, we spent over £1 million in terms of resurfacing works and creating points of interest along the drive. And the reaction has been brilliant. The numbers that we're actually getting through the gate has been very impressive. Actually, okay, it is the summer months, it has been the school holiday, but we're way above expectations there. So that all bodes well. Yeah. We're very much aware that at this moment in time, we've got the Scenic Drive and we've got the visitor centre and we've got a small accommodation offer there and not a great deal else. We've got aspirations to turn it into a regional tourist attraction, and we have managed to secure funding from the Regeneration Board budget to appoint consultants to look at how we can do that. So they are currently developing a master plan with a very commercial edge to it, outlining what we can do to drive visitor numbers, not just through the drive, but through the land that we own as well. They've just drafted that, and we've had discussions with them about opportunities. What seems to be key at Cwmcarn is accommodation and finding suitable land within that very constrained topographical valley to put additional accommodation in, so that we can introduce an offer which keeps people there for longer than they currently do. Not forgetting that it's got a very strong sort of local market as well in terms of people that come up on a daily basis. So we expect that report to be concluded and to be presented to us sometime in October. What we're looking to do then is probably take elements of that report as projects in their own right and develop them as possible levelling up fund applications through the central government funding programme. So it's exciting times. You know, there could well be, from my recollection of the draft proposals in the report, accommodation offer, building on the sort of soft outdoor pursuits offer in terms of walking and cycling and using the lake, but also then developing an evening economy there and using some of the spaces that are used in the day more experimentally into the evening hours.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, I mean that really is encouraging. I was also trying to get a kind of flavour for how this sits now within the wider sort of range of similar facilities within the area. Have you got any sort of comparative figures or any kind of feel for how we're sitting in terms of recovery compared to similar kind of facilities within the wider region here?
I don't actually. You know, I've sort of said earlier on that we've got very strong numbers coming through the gate at present at Cwmcarn, but that's realistically because we've got a new offer, a new visitor offer there, and the Cwmcarn Drive has opened up. You know, if we look at Llancairfawr, then our numbers are a lot lower than that. So I think generally recovery in the visitor sector economy has been particularly slow, and we're bucking the trend with Cwmcarn.
Oh, that's even better news then, really, isn't it? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thanks very much indeed. Okay.
Chair, I put my hand up first before Councillor Goff. I don't know if any others in tonight's meeting can say, I've been there twice. since it reopened. Once at the end of the second week, and then a week later. And I did take the opportunity to speak to as many people who I could see weren't from the valley itself. And the impression I was being given was wonderful. Couldn't wait for it to reopen. We've been reading about it, trying to find out how soon, how long have I got to wait? And it really was from people all around South Wales, very, very well appreciated. And congratulations came to the council, although, of course, so much of the money also came from NRW and all of the planning that had taken. Yes, the resurfacing has made things much easier. The stop-off points give people an indication of where they are, why it's laid out the way it is. So thanks, Alan, to you, all the team who were involved in bringing this to its current state. And if we can improve on it with some more accommodation, as you said, that's going to be what people will appreciate as well. I hope so. So well done to all. It really is worthwhile visiting if you haven't already been. There you are. Over to you now, Bob.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks,
Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, before we come in, Rob, Alan, do you want to respond, Alan?
I was just going to add to that sales pitch, actually. If you see it as a half-day attraction to visit, you know, the pricing policy is very competitive. It's £8 per car.
That's right.
Yeah. I want to add something at this juncture, but I don't want to interrupt your flow, Rob. So if you want to fire away.
Thanks, John. Alan, when you're on about accommodation there, we turn our emphasis away from camping onto glamping, which I assume is the future of what we're looking at. Do we still accommodate some camping on site?
Yeah, we do, Councillor. You know, at the front, we've still got the field which can accommodate about, I think it's up to 8 caravans or large tents. You know, they're all weather pitches. But you are right in that the back end of the field has been given over now, not just to glamping, which are the pods, but to really nice accommodation offer in the lodges. You know, we've built up that offer over the last couple of years using investor save monies from the council. And so we've got a really strong offer across the board, actually, at various price points.
Thanks, Al. I think it's important because although we've been in lockdown, you can see the picture in behind Mike there, but I know there are several other businesses in the area that have looked towards the glamping offer. So you're performing well in a more competitive market, really, which is good to hear.
Thanks, Rob. And if I can just wrap this up with my views on it. My daughter and a partner live in garden superbs, as they call it, actually, and they're frequent users of it. And she sent me this amazing video the other morning of her walk up there. She goes up every morning with beautiful mist across the pond. It really is quite an astonishing place. There's no two ways about it. And you know, it's the sort of place that you want to come back to again, which is fantastic. I just thought I'd add that as a rider. Okay. There was one other point I wanted to touch on, and this might be stretching the boundaries, Mark Williams, if I raise this. But on the report, there are some issues with regard. I think it's page 34, and if it's going to make things problematic, I'll wait for another time for the answer. But it was about the complaints process that's been going ahead, and I noticed that within, I think, community and leisure, there were quite a high number of complaints, 334. And the reason I raise this is that because if you go further down to the area where you're looking at customer intelligence, we're getting incredibly high responses saying how good we are, how well we're doing, you know, how pleased everybody is with us, and they identify specific officers in the planning department and other departments as well. I just wonder whether you could give me a flavour of how those two things kind of sit together, perhaps by starting with telling me what this I think it was 339 complaints, the kind of things that they were about. Are you able to do that?
Let me just find the page, Chair, 'cause it's not page 34.
Oh, is it not? Oh, okay. It was on my thing. Apologies then. I mean, if it's difficult to answer because of that, you know, I can wait.
No, I'll get to it now. I'm nearly there.
I think it's page 37, 38.
Sorry, I'm looking at the page numbers on the DPA itself. Apologies. Of course, you're looking at the page numbers in your pack.
I am, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
I think it's the bottom right chart. Was it on that? I think was it. If I attempt to go up and get that up as well, I'll have so many things on my screen, I won't be able to follow anything, to be frank.
Right. So obviously, community and leisure is quite a big service. It includes all of the sort of sport, leisure, and the parks and countryside service. I don't have the detail available in terms of what those 339 are made up of, Chair, but it's a fair bet that there will be things in there like hedgerows not being cut back, which of course we can't do during the bird nesting season. Yeah. So although the complaints come in, we're unable to deal with some of those issues until after the end of August. So, you know, for example, our hedgerow flailing and drashing program is ongoing now that we're out of the bird nesting season. So there will be issues like that in there, which is probably why they appear higher. Just another point on complaints. I mean, the authority is currently reviewing the way it captures and not deals with, the way it captures complaints. The public service ombudsman has introduced a new regime where he might be a she actually, wants even service requests now classed as complaints, which, you know, many council officers think is a little bit ridiculous. So if Mrs. Jones phones up and says, can I have a visit by pest control to treat rats? The ombudsman wants that treated as a complaint, when in reality it isn't a complaint, because to me a complaint is something where service has failed. You know, and in a case like that, service hasn't failed. So at the minute, the authority is completely revamping and looking at the way it captures complaints involving IT and artificial intelligence. Obviously, we would do it, you know, in 2021. So watch this space for some changes in terms of the way we capture and report on complaints. Does that answer your question, Chair?
It certainly does, yeah. I think the second part of it is kind of alarming. I think rings alarm bells. I mean, the whole notion that we suddenly have requests for service identified as complaints is the sort of thing that I don't think is going to be very helpful for us in terms of evidencing what we do. But if that's the way it is, then that's the way it is. But yeah, thanks for that. And I can fully understand the situation with regard to hedge cutting and that sort of thing. The situation, I know, the last few years has changed. It used to be you start cutting at the end of July. Now it's the end of August. And quite clearly, as we all know, I mean, quite frankly, the growth has been put on by then, and it is a problem for some areas. But we are constrained by environmental requirements, and probably rightly so. So yeah, thanks for that, Mark. Okay. So I think that, are there any other questions for Mark Williams while we're here, members?
Chair, can I just highlight just a couple of things, and I'll focus on regen and planning here in terms of the DPA. Just for the committee to understand and place on record my thanks in front of the committee in terms of regen and planning. Regen staff have worked incredibly hard through the pandemic in conjunction with our corporate finance staff to get an ever-changing set of grant monies. You know, the criteria, the amounts were changing almost on a weekly basis at one point. And as an authority, we've been exceptional at getting Welsh Government grant money out of the door quickly for businesses. I think from memory that is referenced in my director's summary. And also the other kind of half of regeneration and planning, the planning function. You know, we had the pandemic hit, planning committee stopped, not for long, thankfully. You know, so we took the bull by the horns. We've managed remote planning meetings using Microsoft Teams, planning committee meetings, but all of this against the backdrop of the number of planning applications being submitted to the authority increasing by something like 50%. I suspect because many people weren't spending money on things like holidays and therefore decided to spend it on, you know, other things like home improvements. So the planning service has been incredibly busy and is still suffering with backlog issues which they're trying to recover from. And then the flip side, Regeneration have been extremely busy getting grants out the door and have been very successful thanks to some collaborative work with our colleagues from corporate finance.
Thank you, Mark, for making that point. I think we do all endorse that. I think overall, we know what the authority's done. I think we're all going to touch on that sometime during this evening's meeting. I noticed there are two hands up. I didn't know if it was Councillor Cushing or Alan Dallimore.
I think it was me, John.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, only as a subtext really to what Mark has just said about these complaint procedures, because I know everything we have is recorded. Can we maybe in the future, so it doesn't look so dreadful that we've had all these complaints, if there are service requests, that we could do a sort of text on there that these were the amount of complaints and these were the amount of service requests, and that might balance it up a little bit.
I think the difficulty going forward, given the pressure by the Public Service Ombudsman, is we won't have a distinction between complaint or service request. They will all be classed as complaints. But we'll certainly see what we can do with that.
Okay.
Thanks, Don. Alan, your hand's down. Do you want to still say something?
Just to put some detail on what Mark said about us reacting to the COVID situation and the grants we managed to get out of the door, if you don't mind, Chair. We report quite regularly to the Regen Project Board, so I've got the figures in front of me. You know, within Regen, we moved nearly 2,400 grants with a value of over 5 million. But, you know, the larger scheme then operated by NNDR, supported by us, was over 9,000 grants. And with a value of over £50 million. Not small figures.
But they're astonishing figures, quite frankly, you know, Alan, and I think every one of us here will, again, I mean, we can keep patting you on the back, you guys, but you have done a brilliant job. And I think as a local authority, we've all benefited from that, and the residents and businesses here have benefited significantly. I'm kind of don't want to over egg the pudding, but it is really appreciated, I'm sure, by everybody. So that's thanks very much for that. Okay, I think we've probably done that one to death now. So thanks very much for that. If I can move on to agenda item 7, I think I am right. If I'm somebody correct me if I'm right, wrong or right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking at 3 screens again. I believe we're on agenda item 7. So
that's correct, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, that's over to you, Lisa. And I don't know whether you want to introduce it or Fiona's going to come in.
No, I can do that, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, members. The Caerphilly Homes Directorate Performance Assessment report in front of you this evening is the Directorate's self-assessment and forms part of the Council's overall self-assessment activity and provides information and analysis for the year ending 2020-2021. Members, you are invited to discuss, challenge and scrutinise the range of information within the DPA to ensure that you are involved in the self-assessment process. There is a wide range of information contained within the DPA, and therefore you will see at 5.3 and 5.4 on page 66 of your papers that there is a summary of the top 3 achievements and 3 areas that have been identified that require improvement or where there is further learning to be explored. The COVID pandemic has undoubtedly had a significant impact on all services this year, with core services being considerably reduced and staff deployed to support wider corporate community initiatives, such as the Buddy Scheme. Performance has been impacted as a consequence, but essential services have continued to be provided, as well as assistance to our most vulnerable groups of clients. Moving forward, we need to ensure that the housing service can continue to respond proactively to meet the housing and support needs of our clients. Can I put on record my thanks to all housing staff for their efforts during this time? It has not gone unnoticed and it is very much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lisa. Can I pass over to Fiona now? Do you want to take us through the report?
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Phipps has said and Mark previously in relation to the DPA, it's given a little bit of background. It's an annual report. It's an opportunity for us in some ways to recognise the achievements that we've made, but it's also a very open and honest assessment, we feel, as to what progress we've made. It's been a very unprecedented year, as Mark has said. It certainly isn't a typical report in many ways in relation to our achievements. We haven't achieved necessarily as much as we would like to. COVID has resulted in us having to redirect our priorities. And also Welsh Government guidance has restricted an awful lot of what we would normally do. For example, adaptations have been severely constrained because for much of the year the guidance required us to only look at essential high priority adaptations. So we worked in a different way. We weren't able to achieve as much as was expected of us with WHQS. Our programme was due to complete by December 2020, but in recognition of the delays that were imposed on us, that was put back to December 2021, and we continue to work towards it. But at the same time, we feel that we had some very good achievements, and the forced changes to our operations actually did bring some benefits to us that were quite unexpected. I don't think staff were prepared for the move to agile working and home working, and our IT capabilities obviously needed some catching up to get us to the point that we could work in the manner that we were hoping for. But all our staff worked really hard. They adapted very well. And one of the areas where we found that it has brought us benefits is for tenancy support, because we found that the move to virtual support, virtual hearings, for example, with the DWP, have been able to mean our capacity to assist tenants has actually increased. And our income maximisation for tenants and the number of tenants that we've supported has significantly increased this year. And I think that's tantamount to the efforts of the staff and a willingness to embrace new learning, and we will continue with that, and we will move forward with those opportunities. The report is very wide-ranging. It covers an awful lot of topics, so I think rather than me go through each of the items in the areas, it would be best probably to request any questions and we can respond to any specific inquiries.
Absolutely. Members, do we have any questions at this stage?
Well, Chair, we did have a couple of questions which Mark Williams said that would be best answered in the next agenda item, and so Councillor Goff has got his hand up, and Councillor Cushing, who seems to have had her hand up first, and I'll come in with a supplement to Councillor Goff.
I'm happy to go with your view of that, Mike. So we'll start off with was it Councillor Cushing? Yeah.
Cushing.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I know the new way of working, remotely is been quite successful. However, I know the last few months I've been receiving queries regarding people not able to access housing officers. So can we have some sort of idea when the housing officers will start working back from the main base, please?
Okay. We haven't got any dates at the moment to return to the neighbourhood housing offices. The Eastern Valley Area Housing Office permanently closed during the COVID restrictions. It wasn't suitable for use under COVID conditions, and those staff have been operating along with staff from the neighbourhood housing offices out of Gilfach on a rota basis. The staff are all working on a full-time basis, and we've actually changed some of the phone lines to try and increase access to staff. They all have direct lines, and they also have inquiries through the office, but they're not actually in the office every day, so it may take a little bit longer. If you do have any difficulties with access, please let me know, and I will try and make some inquiries to find out if it is an issue with IT or if there are further changes that we need to make. I know there's been some concerns as to who to contact in relation to different areas, and I discussed this with Councillor Phipps a little while ago, and we've actually produced, I was working on it today actually, a spreadsheet that's going to be coming out to members, which will provide information, email addresses, phone numbers for different areas of the service and different officers, and I'll be sending that out to all councillors, hopefully next week, which will provide you with some additional information. The neighbourhood housing offices, at the moment, the assessments that we've done, and with the current social distancing requirements and working restrictions, even with level 0, we can't operate those offices at this present time due to those restrictions. So it's not something that we're looking to open in the short term. What we are doing, though, is we are looking and are actively working on trying to initiate some community surgeries. Once we were looking at the closure of the Eastern Valley area office. It was one of the issues that we said that we would try and accommodate, to actually get into the communities and for our housing staff to meet people within their communities rather than requiring our communities to come to us. And that's something we're actively working on, and we're piloting and beginning to pilot a number of these communities with housing office staff and tenancy support and rent staff, and we will be providing information on those community surgeries, and we're hoping that they will be successful and we'll actually be able to roll those out more widely, because we recognise COVID has perhaps heightened it, but we've been aware for some time that there's a lot of obligation on tenants to have to come to our four central offices, and we feel in this day and age we should be able to provide a more comprehensive offer than that, and now moving into communities more as part of that process. So hopefully that will provide some benefits to tenants and communities as we move forward.
Oh, lovely. So it's like a one-stop shop, really, from what you're saying regarding housing issues.
Sorry, yes, that's what we're hoping for. We're looking at getting a number. We can't do large numbers, obviously, at the moment, and we can't do the normal drop-in arrangements that we'd like to do longer term. We're having to work on appointment focus, but we're hoping to provide housing office and tenancy support, and we're doing it where we can in partnership with other parties. So Caerphilly Cares we're working closely with, and Community Regen, and also the credit unions who've got offices that are open and COVID secure. We're working with them to see if we can have surgeries with them, so that we, rather than just housing issues, there'll be a wider opportunity for support for tenants when they come into those venues.
Yeah, the other thing, sorry, as an add-on to what you've just said in what you've just told us, regarding the information you said you're in the process of doing for contact information, can I just ask, is this going to be published maybe on the website, so that people, you know, most of the people, I know who to contact in my area, but I've had my constituents saying they've had difficulty getting through to these particular individuals when they've tried to contact them. So it would be useful if that information was published on the website.
Yeah, most of the staff and the contacts for tenant inquiries are being routed through a central numbers and being distributed out, because of the difficulties with people working on mobiles and within the home environment, as well as going out on calls. They are not always as accessible as perhaps we would like. So what we're advising is to go through the central numbers if they're unable to get the individual contacts, and we will direct people through, and we'll be able to transfer through. We'll certainly put information.
To that. I know I've had complaints saying that they've actually done that, but they're not getting replies back.
Right. We'll certainly, there's information in the tenant's handbook, and we will provide the information on social media. We probably wouldn't provide the range of information that we're providing to councillors, because we're providing some additional detail for you to go if you've got any other concerns. But yes, I can certainly look at putting a very similar document, an updated one, out onto the internet and social media. That's not a problem at all.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, I was going to say, Councillor Goff's been waiting an awful long time for this.
Yeah.
Point, so
what can I say, Chair?
Speak,
two false starts, and then Fiona steals my thunder. I think it is important, though, because where residents and our tenants are having difficulty contacting people, their fallback is a local councillor. And to be fair, I keep getting the lady's surname wrong. I got Joanne, who works covering from Braddock and Pwllapant, and she tends to get reasonably quickly. But on other occasions, if you haven't got that point of contact, it's causing us difficulty with residents, because in the past we've made a call and we can go back reasonably quickly. So I think it's important that information is fed out to councillors to allow us to try and ease some of the pressure, perhaps in one direction, but obviously with us contacting, he was going to apply pressure in other areas. But I think Mike's got a supplementary that will add to that as well. But I think it's important too, as we got a new chief housing officer coming in, it would be good from our point of view to actually look at the structure. You see a spreadsheet, and I said, a family tree, just to see where we are and who's doing what.
Yeah, I can do something for you on the structure. And the spreadsheet that I'm providing at the moment is purely on some contact information. But we can certainly look at providing you with some information on the structure. I've got a document at the moment that's got some information, but probably not all the contact information, because it becomes very unwieldy then. So I'll have a look and see probably the most beneficial way of getting that information out to you, so it's still quite an easy view, easy read document. What I would say is staff, and we do encourage it as well, to contact by email, and they will come back to you as well. And also, unfortunately, with COVID and the repercussions, we do have staff who go off and have to go off work at quite short notice. And if they are working or dealing with somebody on an email or on a Teams call, they may not be able to pick up a mobile phone, which is why we say, if you aren't successful in getting them direct, to go through the office numbers, and we'll try and arrange for callbacks and responses then. And like I say, if you do have problems, please let me know, because if there's an issue there that we need to deal with, then we will do.
No, to be fair, thanks, Fiona. I've, like I said, got a good relationship with Joanne. And it's working well. But I know other people have asked me, who do I contact? I can't tell them, because I only deal with my particular area anyway, and I wouldn't know. But if you do that family tree, can we possibly have names at posts, so we know the name of the person in that particular post?
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll send you out the general one, so you'll have the generic numbers and the information, but I'll also send you out details of the estate management area officers for each area, so that you'll have that direct information, and I'll send you contact numbers for them as well.
Thanks, Fiona, appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona. Before I bring Mike in, Councillor Philip Bellena, you had a hand up a long time. You want to come in now?
Yeah, thank you. Two questions for Fiona. With tenancy support that has increased, can you tell me in what way? Is this due to the fact that estates management officers haven't got to travel on site and they can deal with things on a remote basis, like we are here in our meetings? Do you actually meet with residents on Teams or meetings like that and resolve issues instead of being face to face? And will this continue in the future if that's the case? And the second question is, with regards to the community surgeries, would we as councillors be able to have a timetable of when these surgeries are held? Because sometimes it's a good way for us to learn as well, for us to get some information and for us to come down maybe with people who would like some support, and we can jointly help them, so to speak.
Okay,
thanks.
In response to your second point, the community surgeries, as they develop, we will be publicising them, and so that information will be available. And if you'd like to attend with one of the tenants to provide support or advocacy, then yes, we would welcome that. Obviously, we've got the restrictions at the moment with COVID, so we're not able to operate perhaps as openly and fully as they are. In relation to the support, Sandra Isaacs, the rents manager who manages our tenancy support officers, can provide you with a more detailed response. But We certainly are being able to contact more people. One example is DWP reviews, whereas in the past we've had to attend them in person in places like Cardiff and Newport. They are now being done virtually, and we, rather than spend that travelling time up and down the M4 or wherever we need to be, we can sign on for that meeting and we go straight into it. So that frees up an awful lot of our time. It tends to be the income maximisation tends to be done through our tenancy support officers, and we also find, for example, with our sheltered housing officers, they're having to provide support in different ways and find different ways of working for all our areas, providing tenants that support. So we don't do a huge amount on Teams. We are able to do appointments on Teams with tenants if they've got capacity and are willing, and also an awful lot of it is via phone calls. Sandra, I don't know if you want to provide some additional information for your team.
Yeah, that's right, Fiona. What we do quite a lot, Councillor Leonard, is conference calls with the tenant, the DWP, and our support staff. Attending a tribunal with the DWP is quite daunting, and the fact that one of my support staff is there with them and can lead them through the process is invaluable. Yeah. We look at the tenant and resident journey, and at the end of the support, we carry out a survey to try to gauge what they thought was helpful, because our remote provision hasn't been my team doing what they think is best. We've developed and modelled this based on what our tenants want. WhatsApp is something our tenants use, so we've been using that. We have the staff are so eager to progress the loan work, the working at home, to support residents because they like it, and as Fiona mentioned earlier on, Langstone, a lot of our tribunals were held. Well, the member of staff was out of the office all day. Now they can have a tribunal in the morning and a tribunal in the afternoon. These are predominantly PIP hearings where they've assisted a resident to claim PIP and it's been refused. They do a mandatory reconsideration, then they'll go to tribunal. And we are getting thousands of pounds in backdate for our tenants. I did a quick analysis prior to this meeting. The DPA refers to £2.5 million additional benefits for our residents last year. Up to the end of August, we're already over £1 million this year. We are supporting more residents, but we're not naive, and that's why we want to progress to the community surgeries. At the moment, we're in Haverdaig, which is very successful, Graigaracha, and as I said, we've got Blackwood and Caerphilly we're looking at, Risca. So, it's not an easy process because we have to do a complete COVID risk assessment. But, our aim is to get more of these venues so our staff can work out to the communities where our tenants live and not expect them to come to, which could be 2 bus journeys to get to our offices. Thank you.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's a really, really good, effective way of communicating with the residents. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you're happy with that. Yeah, I just second what's been said. I think the way in which you've developed this whole process and notion of accessing our clients, for want of a better term, is really paying dividends. I think Mike's got something to bring in, but if I can just touch on this, if I may, I just want you to just give us a bit of a flavour of the resource implications, though, because I know with some of these things, we've opened Pandora's box. We're doing a fantastic job, but there are significant resource implications, I think, from this. And I don't know whether either of you want to just touch on that. Give us a flavour of how things are.
At the moment, as I said, we're helping a lot of people because of the remote working. But, the Welsh Government's aim of no evictions into homelessness, we have totally embraced. We're not, our aim is to sustain tenancies. And, you know, that's our key aim. We support people from the day they become a tenant. We work with them. We look at doing a health check with them. I don't mean a medical health check, it's a financial health check to make sure they start the tenancy. We work with them to get white goods from grants. So we'll get them cookers, we get them fridge freezers if they haven't got the money to buy them, you know. And I think if you start a tenancy off well, it goes well for the future. And for me, it's important that our tenants know that we're there to support them. And the job satisfaction that the team has is absolutely huge. They love their jobs. They absolutely love their jobs. And I think the case studies they send to me to show what they're doing, you know, the job satisfaction is huge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Before I bring Mike in, because there's one question I want to ask you. I'm sorry, I do apologise, Mike. It's a question. I don't want to end on a negative. I don't want to end on a negative. That's the point. And this is a glowing report, quite frankly. And as we've said previously, we can only commend everything that you've all been doing, both during this pandemic and as we come out of it, even more so, perhaps. You know. But I did notice one of the charts. Forgive me, I can't remember the page now. But it was about the disabled facilities grant for private sector housing. I raise this because there is an issue with my ward currently along these lines. But I noticed there was a significant delay sometimes in getting this done. It's something like 380 days. I wonder whether there's any way someone could explain to me why something like that would take such an enormous amount of time.
Yeah, I can do. And this year, the figures have actually increased, partly because of the COVID delays. The number of adaptations we've been able to carry out during that time has reduced, and that we weren't able to progress them for a significant period of time. The performance indicator starts from the point of first inquiry into social services, through the assessment with social services, into the application process for the Disabled Facilities Grant, any planning requirements, the tendering process, the carrying out of the construction work, to the day that the grant is signed off. The type of grants that we did during 2021, in part due to the COVID restrictions, tended to be larger grants because they linked into things like hospital discharges. So they were very high priority, complex cases. So by the very nature of them, they took longer to progress because of the type of works. And we also had several months for the non-priority ones where we couldn't do any work at all. And that is all added to the waiting time because it's based on calendar days. What we also do, and we've considered this before, and it has actually gone through members to try and seek their support for it, is that we don't focus on number of days. Some local authorities work on a number of days, and if the tenant or the applicant doesn't provide the paperwork by a fixed time or isn't able to provide the tenders, say, well, you've had your time, we'll close it down and you'll have to apply again. We work very intensely with grant applicants to ensure that the most vulnerable applicants get the support they need. And sometimes it does take a long time. It takes a lot of intervention and encouragement. There's a means testing process that we have to go through that relies on applicants providing us with information. We also, if an applicant's needs change during the application process, we reflect that. So if, for example, we have a request for an adaptation that might involve a stair lift, and we go through that application and we provide the applicant with the stair lift. So we've gone through all the application process, and then their needs change or things develop and we get another recommendation from the social services OT to say, well, actually no, this client requires a shower, a level access shower. Rather than close the application down and focus on the number of days and the performance information, what we do is we put the client first. So rather than shut it down and say, right, this is a new application, go through the process and start again, we keep that application open. We work with that tenant. We then add that additional work to the application, and we go through another tender process for that element of work and go through another contractual arrangement to get to the end point. So what we find is we never look very good on the PI because it's a very black and white PI number of days, but we always do very well on customer satisfaction because we've got an agency service that goes over and above to make sure those people get what they need. And unfortunately, that's not always recognised. We have campaigned with Welsh Government in line with a number of other organisations who operate in the same way that we do. And that PI is being reviewed and they are moving away from it and are looking much more at outcomes and the changes and the improvements in quality of life and independence of those applicants rather than how many days did it take you to do it, because that isn't a reflection of the service we provide and we don't see that as being a positive. So for officers, I think it's disappointing for us that the harder we work to achieve what we need to achieve for those tenants and those applicants, the perception is that we are not doing well, whereas the residents generally see that we're providing a good service. So it's quite demoralising, to be honest, for some of the staff that they keep being beaten up by this PI outcome because it doesn't recognise, you know, the achievements that they're putting forward. So Welsh Government are taking it on board to some extent and they are trying to change some of the information, but it's a national, it's not a PI now, it's a PAM, it's one of the assessment measures, and we do take part in it. Some local authorities have withdrawn from it entirely because they see it as being an inappropriate measure, but we're trying to work with Welsh Government to achieve it. But please don't just look at it as the number of days. There is an element to it, we can't deny that, but it's not everything in itself. So that would be my argument.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question, in fact, then, really, because that's in fact confirmed, really, that these things are anomalous. It jumped out the page at me. I asked that question, and quite clearly the reality is that, in fact, because of the flexible approach that you adopt, you're actually getting better outcomes as a consequence, even though the time delay is longer. So yeah, I would hope very much that Welsh Government do accede to the pressure and recognise that there should be a different way of assessing this kind of thing. So thanks very much for that. Mike, finally, I'm to you. Apologies.
Can I just, sorry, Councillor Adams, I'm interrupting now as well. Can I just add that with that adaptations one, we may still have that indicator next year. We haven't got that confirmation, but the impact of COVID will have a significant impact on that indicator for a significant period of time, because we've had a significant number of months where we haven't been able to do those adaptations, but now we are able to progress them. We are hit with contractor shortages and material shortages. As Alan Dallimore mentioned in his report, everybody's having home improvements done. There aren't enough contractors out there. There aren't enough materials. So whilst we're doing the best we can to move these processes forward, and we have changed some of our tendering process to reflect it, it is causing us significant problems, and that is likely to continue, unfortunately, for at least another 12 months.
Thanks, Fiona. Okay. I hesitate to say, Mike, it's down to you now, because
well, that's okay, because you can only imagine after all that we've just heard how much more I might be asking. Yes, because it's moved on from the original question, which came from Councillor Goff's request, which, as he said, Fiona had pretty much come up with all the answers before he answered the question. But one thing on what you've just been talking about, Fiona, you did mention about it being intense, and intense can be go towards intensive or intensively, and I should say, please look at how you can use intensively to end up saying sensitively. And that's what you've been doing. And that's what we all want you to be doing, is looking after the tenant with a need. And it might not be just a tenant, but someone who lives within Caerphilly and going through other means to have the kind of life that they can live at home. And that's what we want, isn't it? So well done for all you said, and all of the work that Sandra was able to give us as well about the teens there, and how much they go beyond and beyond and beyond to make sure that our tenants are living the kind of life that we hope they can, as best they can. But my question really was, after having some information and requests for how do I get this done from a tenant who, not now a tenant, a private individual who had her front wall knocked down when we were doing WHQS work. And we rebuilt it, and something happened, and she wanted to know, are we going to rebuild it after it had fallen down? So it took me a couple of officers to find out how to get through to the appropriate officer who might have the information about what had happened originally. And that came up with the question, WHQS should have finished a year ago. All of these people really should have been back at their original jobs. So I wonder how we've moved with that and where they are now working if it's still not on the huge workload that we had with WHQS. Has everybody gone back to their original responsibility? That would come back to Rob's question about where are all these members, in what are their roles now, so that we might have a better chance of getting to the right person sooner.
Okay,
and, you've answered much of that, I know, but that might be a slightly different question.
Yes, it is. I mean, with the WHQS program, it's obviously been a very protracted program over a number of years, and the staffing has changed during that time to reflect natural changes and obviously the differing priorities as the program has progressed.
That's right.
In recognition that the scheme was drawing to an end, we have actually reviewed staffing arrangements, and there has been a reduction in staff that has been managed. For example, some of our tenant liaison officers have been redeployed, and they're now providing, for example, tenancy support. So they've gone to support tenants through Sandra's team, which has been, the timing was, very apt, as we were needing to provide more tenancy financial support. So they've gone there. We've also got some of them, a couple of them have redeployed to estate management support officers and working within communities. And one of them has gone to support tenancy enforcement, because you may remember, some members may remember last year, I think, or the year before now, at the time we go into a bit of a limbo with COVID, we did a report on the pressures of the tenancy enforcement team.
Yes.
And so we've actually redeployed one of those staff in to support the tenancy enforcement officers, which has worked really well. So that the support staff, some of them have moved on, some are still supporting the programme. We also have got post WHQS, a planned asset management programme, and a number of the staff have actually moved on to that programme to support the next phase.
Yeah.
So they are progressing. Other staff, we employed a number of agency staff, and they have their contracts have ended. Some of them have come to a natural end, and they've moved on to other areas of focus. So we've still got a core complement which are being used to support our void properties. We've purchased some properties, and they are working to refurbish those as well. And the asset management one. We also have had a number of key staff who have retired recently. Some of the project managers who have led that programme for a significant number of years have retired in recent 12 months. So we have lost a number, and that's a significant loss to the service, because all that knowledge and information is in the heads as much as in the paper, isn't it?
That's it.
So there have been a significant change. So there may be new faces, and it may well be that people who would have been readily available, for example, if a wall was built 3 or 4 years ago and we're trying to find out what's happening, the people whose would have had the best memories of it have moved on. So it does take us a little bit longer to find out the information, but it is still there.
Yeah, that's okay.
We've still got a very strong team there, but it's always sad to see some of the more experienced ones move on, unfortunately.
That's okay. So once you provide the information about who is in what position, it'll be a lot easier for all of us to go even quicker to the right person.
Yeah, certainly, and it may well be. I won't give you obviously the details of everyone and anyone because it'll give you too much choice. Then it'll confuse you further. But I'll give you some of the key points that will lead you in the right direction.
And they will know the next person in line who can really help you.
They'll take it forward for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Fiona, and thanks very much, Sandra, for your information as well. That was a great team.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Fiona. I don't see any more hands up, and I'll have to discuss this with Mark in a minute or two. The recommendation on this report is on page 65 of your packs, and we were asked to review the attached document, which was Appendix 1, discuss and challenge and scrutinise the information contained within, which I think we have done quite satisfactorily, and so that concludes this report. Mark, I didn't actually go through the process of concluding the report with the first one that Mark S. Williams gave us. Do you think it's appropriate I should go back to that now and round it off?
Chair, you could just read out the recommendation, but it is very similar to the recommendation you've just read, and it is to note and scrutinise the report, and that is what the committee has done this evening. Fine,
okay, in which case I won't go back over it again. Thank you for that. So we can now move on to the last item on the agenda tonight, which is item 8. It's the Welsh Government Prospectus Programme Development Plan. And we have with us tonight Lisa again, and the report was written by Jane Robert Waite. So over to you two both.
Thank you, Chair.
You too.
Members, changes have been made to the way in which the Welsh Government's social housing grant is coordinated and allocated amongst partner housing associations and Caerphilly Homes. To coincide with these changes, Welsh Government have also introduced a series of new requirements, including the introduction of a new grant regime and viability model, a new programme development plan format, and a requirement for a local housing market assessment prospectus, which sets out the housing needs and priorities in each local authority area based on the LHMA. This evening, you are asked for your views on the 2021-2022 Programme Development Plan and the Local Housing Market Assessment Prospectus prior to its submission to Welsh Government and to Cabinet on the 15th of September 2021. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lisa. Jane, do you want to take us through the report?
Yes, Chair, happy to do so. Okay, so Lisa's given you obviously the background to the report. I'm going to go through it in some detail because it is quite a detailed report, so bear with me. It's quite long as well, so I'll crack on if that's all right. So Welsh Government, in their programme for government announced on the 15th of June, they made a commitment to deliver 20,000 new affordable low carbon homes for rent across Wales during the next 5 years. And this is part of the process, okay, that they're going through in terms of how they're going to deliver this enormous number of new homes. And in order to deliver the commitment, they make available a social housing grant. And in the past, that has been made available only to housing associations, and those housing associations in Caerphilly who've been zoned with ourselves. So the likes of Pobl, United Welsh, Link, and First as well. So those housing associations have basically had all of the grant that's been allocated on a social housing grant basis for Caerphilly. They've had it at a preferential grant rate of 58%, which means that the majority of the schemes that are funded within the county borough are funded by the social housing grant. Okay, so it's the first time ever that Caerphilly, as a stock retaining authority, has actually had the ability to also access the social housing grant. So it's a major step forward for us, and especially now, given our ambition to deliver 400 new homes over the next, 4 years, but that commitment was made back in January 2020. As Lisa's noted, they've introduced a number of other changes, not only with the access to the grant, but also something called a new viability model, a standard viability model, which is essentially a calculator that we input different variables into in order to determine the level of grant that will now be paid. So the 58% is no more, and it will be replaced now by a grant rate determined by the standard viability calculator. Okay. There's a new programme development plan as well, and a new format for that, and that is the document in which all the schemes are collated. I hope you can hear me. Can I just check that you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
All the schemes are collated within the PDP, or the programme delivery plan, and that plan outlines all the schemes over the next 3 years for the housing associations and the local authority. It sets out what schemes are going to be delivered, where, when, and how, and at what grant rate. Okay, so it's a very comprehensive document. It's a document that's updated quarterly as well through discussions with the housing associations and also ourselves. And that information is then presented to Welsh Government so that they are updated as part of that process. The PDP is included in the document, in the report that you have today. It's, I think, included as Appendix 2. So again, if you want to scrutinise that, please, by all means, do so and raise any questions. In addition to these changes, Welsh Government have introduced, helpfully, another requirement to help deliver affordable homes in Caerphilly. And it's not only in Caerphilly, obviously I should add that, but something called the Local Housing Market Assessment Prospectus. It is a bit of a mouthful. The prospectus is designed to be a summary document, okay? It's designed to extrapolate some of the information out of the local housing market assessment, which is a statutory requirement, which looks at housing need across the borough, and summarise it in a very concise document. And Welsh Government intend to use that document as the basis for decision making and ensuring that the schemes within our PDP or programme development plan align with the needs that have been identified within the county borough. Okay. Now, what I will say is a note of caution there, and it is noted in the report, that our current prospectus, which is also attached to the report that you have in front of you, is based on the local housing market assessment data gathered back in 2018. That is a concern. It's a concern for us and a concern for the housing associations. However, we recognise that concern. The local housing market assessment has been aligned to the timescale involved in the development of the new LDP. Therefore, that work has started. We're expecting it to be concluded by the end of the year, and we anticipate bringing a revised prospectus to you early next year, basically, which should be reflective of the new evidence base and the new data. Rob, do you want me to take questions as we go through? I'm happy to do that.
Members, do you want to ask questions? Do you want to wait until the end? You've got your hand up, Rob. Do you want to put a question now?
If I can, John, and it's touching on what Jane has already said. On page 104, paragraph 4.2, it's the delivery of affordable housing and the monitoring of it, but there's no mention of scrutiny involvement then and actually scrutinising the process. How do we get involved and take part in that process? Because it's important. It's the future of our public sector housing, really.
In terms of the process, Rob, it's very difficult because it's a prescribed process that has been, requested and asked of us by Welsh Government. It's also very difficult because the HAs have their own development and delivery plans. But what we're trying to do here through using an evidence base, i.e. the local housing market assessment, is ensure that those decisions are made in accordance with the evidence that is available and the need. So
so at some time during the process, will that information be fed into the scrutiny committee?
Well, the information is being fed in now, Rob. That's precisely the point. In the appendices, you'll see there that the detail is actually there for scrutiny to take a look at. What I intend to do is bring forward a further report in early 2022, which will then outline the information based on the new local housing market assessment, again, for you to take a look at.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I was concerned. They'll be continually updated, and periodically it'll feed into the scrutiny process for us to be kept abreast of what's going on, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jane.
Absolutely.
Do you want to carry on, Jane, to the end, and then we'll come in with other questions?
We have Walter with his hand up as well, Chair.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, Walter. Hold that, Jane. Do you want to ask your question, Walter, while we've got this opportune moment?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yes, housing need and demand on page 97 in 2.4. It mentions it showed a nil requirement overall for 2 and 3 bedroom general needs accommodation. Well, that's not how it relates in my ward.
No.
I mean, we are desperate really for 3 bedroom housing.
Okay.
You know, once you put a family into a 2 bedroom, as they grow up, they expand, they want more room. And if we're not going to build these now, we're going to get trouble in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I think what we're saying there, we're looking at an overall picture there. And generally, the need in Caerphilly is for 1 bedroom, one person accommodation, and that information has been actually ratified today, because I've been having a conversation with the Housing Solutions manager, who very much is confirming that is the pattern that we're still seeing. So I don't anticipate that there's going to be a significant shift, but what I would say in response to that is what we are trying to do is build diverse and inclusive communities now. What we don't want is a repeat of the past. So what we don't want is the Holly Roads, the Lansbury Park, situations repeating themselves, where we have concentrations of 1-bed accommodation. We want to build diverse communities. That's both the council, of course, and our housing association partners. So inevitably, there will be those 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom homes, but we also have to be mindful that, we have to base the allocation of public funding on need and on evidence. And so that is what this process is designed to do. In some wards, there may be an identified need. In the majority of wards, it is for single person accommodation and also for some specialist housing as well.
Okay, thanks so much.
Answer your question. Yeah. Okay, fine.
Okay, right.
Jane, back to you.
Okay, so I talked about the PDP. I talked about the fact that all the schemes brought forward by the housing associations are included in the PDP, and that kind of gives you an indication of how the social housing grant is then distributed amongst the various partners. As you know, I've mentioned Caerphilly Homes works in partnerships with the zoned housing associations, but there's been a further change that this report highlights as well, and that is to those partners that we are eligible to work with. Okay, they're getting rid of the zoning idea, and they're zoning now on a South East Wales regional basis. So what that means is, whereas before we were zoned to work, as you all will know, with United Welsh, Link, Pobble, etc., they're now opening that opportunity up, and thereby allowing other social housing providers in South East Wales to come forward and ask to be part of the Caerphilly PDP programme. Okay, I've mentioned in the report that Bronavon have already stepped forward to have those conversations, and at the moment there's no basis upon which to refuse that dialogue. In it, what we have said is that if they are wanting to work with us, they need to work within the constraints or not constraints, are the wrong word, apologies, within the framework of the memorandum of understanding that we have with the housing associations. They have to sign up to that partnership approach. So I don't know whether there's any questions about that specifically, because that's a significant departure from what has happened previously.
I certainly have, Jane. If I can just come in on that thing, I don't know where this. I'll start with the question on the zoning, because that kind of confused me. As we're going to a South East Wales zone, how does that impact on our local delivery requirements? because it occurs to me, and I'm sure you'll give me the reasons why this isn't the case. It occurs to me you can have a situation where we have a specific desire or specific need, or more likely we've got an area that we can develop within the county borough. But in terms of our adjoining neighbours, they may well have something which is very close by as well that they wish to develop, and I could anticipate there being some kind of clash within this, which would mean that only one of us will be able to go ahead with that particular scheme. Is that the case, and how would it work?
Well, I'll use a generic example, I guess, that's been brought forward by Bronaf, and we've had a couple of sites on the periphery of the county borough that they've suggested may be included. What I will say is that the majority, well, 2 of those sites are not included within the settlement boundary at the moment, so there's a case to be made there in terms of actually bringing those sites forward for residential development anyway. You know, the reality is that we can't prevent that happening, but what we do need to do, and I apologise because the dog is now barking, is that we need to work with those new providers. We need to understand what their development strategy is, because we need, if we can, influence development. You know, mostly they're looking at buying up private land or working with us in partnership. And of course, you know, we're open to those conversations. What we'd like to do is try and steer those developments, if they do come forward, in the right direction, so they're in accordance with some of the principles that we're looking to deliver around zero carbon homes, for example, and around, you know, accessible homes. And again, this whole concept of building homes, the right homes in the right places for the people who need them the most. That's the kind of principle that we're looking for. So in essence, Councillor Ridgewell, we kind of have to embrace it, but it's a conditional embracing, if you like.
Okay, yeah, because my concern was it would compromise our own local delivery plans and our own personal aspirations within the ward, within the authority. Sorry. Okay. The other question that I had actually was coming back to the transitional arrangements with regard to the funding. Is that a pot we all dip into, and does that mean we could now be in competition with other housing providers in order to get the funding?
Right. So this year we're allocated 2.5 million to spend on our own delivery programme. Okay. Most definitely next year and the year after, we are in competition with the housing associations. However, what I would say is that because we have our meetings with them quarterly, you know, we do operate in partnership. We're obviously in the infancy of our programme. I think as we become more experienced and as our programme develops at scale and pace, there may be some more difficult conversations to be had, Councillor Ridgewell, absolutely, because we will be looking for more of the pot, absolutely, and why shouldn't we be?
Well, indeed, but my understanding is that on a lot of these occasions we're going to work with housing associations to deliver these projects anyway.
Not in all cases.
Okay, all right, yeah.
You know, what we're trying to do is not put all our eggs in one basket.
Right,
we're trying to look at various delivery options. Obviously, you know, we would love to work in partnership with the housing associations. We're working, for example, with United Welsh on the Windsor Colliery site, where we probably will be looking to purchase some units as they develop that site out. So it very much depends, again, on, you know, who that partner is, where they are delivering, and also the transfer values, because in most cases we will be looking to purchase from the HAs. In some cases where we have land that we might want to put out to the market, there's nothing to stop HA from bidding through that procurement process and working with us. So it's a variety of tools to deliver what we need to.
Okay, so it's a moving sea at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. Thanks for both those answers. Members, are there any other questions you would like to ask officers now?
I don't have a question. I know I got my hands up, but I'm going to have to leave, unfortunately, because something's come up. Apologies, everyone.
Not at all, Donna. Thank you for being with us tonight. Okay, thanks very much indeed. Okay. So thank you. If there are no other questions, then we can move.
I have one, Chair. I didn't know whether Jane was going to be continuing with her presentation, because this one is towards the end. And it's actually on Appendix 3, the summary of development that's funded by, and I recognise some of those there because I've recognised they've come through planning. But there's one which is very close to me in Pollenfraith, the former Crown Inn, is down there for 14 units. Where does that number originated from, Jane? Because it certainly hasn't come through as a planning application yet.
I'll have to check, Councillor Adams, but I think that particular scheme might be on the provisional list.
And that's what I would have expected.
Yes.
But who would have put that number down? Is it our expectation as the authority, or Welsh Government telling us that they've heard that from the owners of the land it could be that much?
No, that would be Link.
It would be Link. They are the housing association who are linked with the.
Yes, that's where that information will have been derived from.
Right.
Because as part of the PDP process, as I've said, we've gone out to the HAs and asked them to input what their development proposals are for the next 3 years.
Right. I would have hoped that if it was going to be affordable housing, we could have had a few more than 14 on that particular size of site.
Well, and to be honest with you, you may have more, you may have less, because when these schemes, this is a move-in feast, and I think it's important to reiterate that.
I understand that.
Yeah, construction is so fluid, and obviously with the introduction of some of the SAB legislation and things like that, that can impact upon the numbers that can be delivered on particular sites. So, take a pinch of caution there, I think.
A pinch of caution. I will carry that forward, Jane. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Fine, thank you. I don't see any other further hands up. So the recommendation.
Yes, Chair.
Pardon. Bob, sorry, Bob. My apologies. Go away. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, similar type question here to what Mike was saying. It's to do with what's actually being included at 5.24, and we got T Darren in Risca. Now, we got major sheltered issues in Risca. We've got a complex that's closing. I brought this up before, and we're talking about this hub as well, integrated health and wellbeing hub. And I was informed previously that part of that hub would be a major sheltered housing complex, which would accommodate the we've got one complex closing, as there's one up in Cross Keys, I believe, possibly two, to take all of those to allow the closure, and also to decant from another complex, which is Britannia, because they can't do the WHQS work in Britannia unless they can decant them. So we were told, and the people of these, in Risca in particular, St Mary's and St Mary's Court and Britannia, that this would all happen by 2022. Now, COVID notwithstanding, of course, that's put everything back a year probably. What I thought was going to be a major complex on the T Darren site to do this, is to only be 40 houses. So where is the sheltered housing complex disappeared to?
Right, okay. Councillor Owen, the note in 5.24, and I will talk a little bit more about that in a moment, actually. It talks about a minimum of 40 homes for older people, actually, in 5.24, and that is the sheltered housing scheme that you're referring to. What I will say is that there has been a development with the Aneurin Bevan Health Board in the last month or so, and I was under the impression that the director was going to be in contact with you to have some detailed conversations about the proposals there. I'm sure Lee is on it, and I'll remind him tomorrow. But what's happened is, because the Health Board, our programme doesn't align with theirs, unfortunately. And I think because we have people waiting, as you say, to move into this new accommodation, there's been a decision taken within health and also within the local authority that the timelines don't allow, and we have to get on with this project. So we won't be working with the Health Authority now on this particular project. I can certainly arrange, like I say, via the director to update you in further detail. But the proposal now is very much to build on our site in Risca, on our Darren site. And the plan that you see in this report is actually for us to acquire the land, because you will know that that land sits within the general fund. And in order for Caerphilly Homes to build that land out, we have to acquire it at cost into the general fund. So the first part of the proposal that you see in this report is to try and acquire that land this year. What I will also say is that on that particular project, we've lost about 40% of the developable area on that site, largely due to culverts, largely due to flooding and other constraints. And again, I think it would be useful if we could talk through those in some detail so that you understand the work that we have been doing and some of the constraints that we've come up against. So that's still very much the plan, is to build an older person's housing scheme on that site. What I will say is it's not going to be so sheltered housing as you know it. It is going to be something different to our current offer, because I think we realise that moving forward, we do need a different older person's offer. And so again, I'd really appreciate it if we could perhaps get together to discuss that with yourself and others.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that on the basis of the fact that it's 40 homes and it may be different type of accommodation and all, and I can see that's fine. But my other concern would be then is that's not going to be enough to decant all of these people. So we need to look at something else in Risca as well as a replacement.
Yeah, we're also looking at a number of other sites, Councillor Owen, as well, and we can touch on some of those with you too. Work is underway to kind of maximise the I suppose the number of units that we can actually deliver on that site, but also recognising the fact that what we wouldn't want to do is too densely populate that particular site either. We want to create something that is special and that kind of sets the standard for the future in terms of older persons accommodation in Caerphilly. So I think let's get around the table and let's have those discussions. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk. I've always talking to Dave Street, etc., about that site and also Brooklands. And it was always said that, oh no, everything's going to go on that site. So Brooklands, which would be a nightmare for parking if it was a house building, that we could look at shelter there. Anyway, that's ward stuff. Yeah. But this is why my concern was that 40 is definitely not enough. Hence my question.
Can I interrupt you and just say that Fiona would like to come in and join this conversation, I think. Hopefully that might help as well. Thanks, Fiona.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Fiona, go away.
Thanks, Councillor Adams. It was only just to add a point that in relation to Britannia Court, the intention hasn't been for the residents of Britannia Court to be decanted to Darren, and that the timeline for Darren won't impact on the proposals to carry out the refurbishments for Britannia Court, and we are looking at the moment at decant opportunities elsewhere. As part of our sheltered housing programme, we have recently decanted all the residents from the Ynys Wen sheltered scheme to alternative accommodation, and we're currently planning the same and actively progressing decanting for Highfield Court. And the proposal is that Britannia will follow on from that. So any proposals for Britannia Court aren't going to be impacted or delayed by the proposals for Darren. And the timeline that was given to tenants and that was taken through the Cabinet report for the proposal for Darren was aiming for completion by 2025.
I can imagine that that's gone back, but for the more St Mary's Court was the one I was concerned with, because St Mary's Court is not having any repairs. It's not going to be made up. So obviously we need accommodation for them. And I believe they were told, or residents told me, that they said they'd be moved out by 2022. So again, they couldn't go to Darren.
No, the report for St Mary's was 2025, and we have on a number of occasions advised the tenants that it's 2025, but I appreciate what you're saying in relation to the numbers, and that's something we're still working on. And obviously as time progresses, we have to look at the number of tenants who wish to be decanted or wish for permanent alternative moves. So as Jane said, obviously we'll have those conversations with you in relation to what opportunities there are for that site.
Okay, I'd be grateful to sort of be genned up on that ASAP. Because again, as I say, I've got some information and ideas myself. Okay. But thank you very much both for updating me.
Okay. Thank you.
And I hope you like the Risker Cuckoo, the new Caerphilly background. That's the
I certainly do. Very impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see any more hands up. So the recommendation of this report is on page 84 of your packs, okay? That the content of the report, PDP and draft LHMA prospectus is noted by the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, that's us, and that any amendments or clarifications raised by the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee are incorporated into the report in readiness for its presentation to Cabinet on the 15th of September 2021. That really draws our meeting to a conclusion. Can I thank the officers particularly for their in-depth responses tonight. There's been an awful lot of detail here. I'm sure we could have asked many more questions and spent several hours talking about it tonight, but I think we have covered all the key points. And thank you all members for your contribution as well. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.